What is up, guys? This is the first video of 2017. Are you excited? I know I am, as you can tell by my voice. So, I'm sorry, I'm feeling a little sick. I've been sick for the past couple of days, but especially when it's cold outside, my nose gets a little more runny, and it's just overall just not a pleasant experience. But I'm here to talk about the brand split because we all love ourselves a good brand split. The brand split recently came back over the summer. And since then, I'm not a biggest fan of the brand split, especially, I was down with it in the early 2000s when you had a huge roster and, you were just stacked. And I think the WWE roster, to an extent, is stacked. It's just like they have great wrestlers, but they don't have big stars, if you know what I mean. There's so many great wrestlers on that roster, but like who can care about them? You know what I mean? In-ring work only gets you so far. That's what I've been saying for a while, and it's true. I mean, you have so many great wrestlers, but when there's nothing to get behind, people are going to tune out, no matter how good your match is. So I'm trying to get a little off topic here, but I want to stay back on topic. So what I'm here to talk about are the top 5 wrestlers who have benefited most from the brand split. Now, this is covering, the most recent brand split and the initial one back in the early 2000s. Now, obviously, this brand split is still early. The one we're currently in, it's still early in the game. There's still a lot more to be done, and you can only judge so much as I can right now. You know what I mean? Like there are some people on this list who are in the current brand split, and you know, they might fall flat in a couple months, so maybe this video will be dated soon. But you know what I mean? So like you just have to keep that in mind of like people in the current brand split, things might change. Like someone who might not even be considered for this list might eventually make it on there. It's just things like that. So you just need to keep that in mind. I want to give a few honorable mentions. The first 2 honorable mentions I want to give kind of go in the same kind of boat. Heath Slater and James Ellsworth. I gave them an honorable mention. I didn't want to put them on the list because it seems like they're kind of flash in the pans. Like they had a little fun moment, like Heath with the the tag title win, and Ellsworth with this whole AJ thing. They were fun for a bit, but now they seem to run its course. Slater and Rhino kind of seem done with their whole thing. They might still be a tag team, but they don't seem to be tag team championship contenders for a while. And Ellsworth, kind of the same thing. He's kind of mixed in with AJ and Dean Ambrose, but I don't see that going anywhere soon. He's now like dating Carmella. You know what I mean? So they were kind of both flash in the pans. They really weren't meant to be taken as like legit stars. They were just kind of fun things to do. They might not have been able to do had Raw and SmackDown been sharing one giant roster. And then another one I wanted to give a shout out to was Shelton Benjamin. He just didn't make the list because I just decided to put the guy number 5. I thought just had more reason to go on the list. But I mean, Shelton Benjamin, he was put on Raw in the 2004 draft, and they kind of launched him in a sense. Like he beat Triple H like 3 weeks in a row or something like that. He never got a world title run out of it. And again, like people have always said, "Oh, Shelton Benjamin, he should have won a Money in the Bank. He should have been world champion." I don't think I necessarily agree. I don't think he agrees. I think he always said he never wanted to be champion. I mean, Shelton Benjamin had zero personality, and besides, I don't know if that name really, like Shelton Benjamin. Yeah, it's got a ring to it, but like I don't know if that's like. It seems kind of like it's a mid card name, if you know what I mean. You know what I mean? Like it just doesn't have like that like larger than life name to it. It just sounds like an accountant's name in a sense. You know what I mean? So I think I don't know if that is his real name or not. It might be. I think it is. I think him and Charlie Haas, they probably have real names. Besides, they came into the WWE when WWE was going through that phase where everyone had their real name. Shelton Benjamin, Charlie Haas, John Cena, Randy Orton, Brock Lesnar, Batista to an extent. I mean, he was the Leviathan in OVW, but that's beyond the point. I mean, everyone kind of had that nickname because John Cena was like prototype or whatever. So like they all had kind of like wacky names in OVW, I think. But yeah, like that kind of group of guys that came in around like they were in OVW for like from like 2000 to 2002. Like they used their real names, and now WWE seems to be on a phase where like they're giving people like legitimate first names with kind of rock star like last names, you know what I mean? Like Finn Balor, Seth Rollins, Dean Ambrose, Roman Reigns. You're not going to see someone called like the Destroyer or something like that. That's so like old school or whatever. Anyway, I'm getting I got off topic to an unrecognizable degree. I should have been the list should have been over by now. I meant to keep this video short. God damn it. Whatever. So Shelton Benjamin, honorable mention, and the last honorable mentions were Chris Benoit and Eddie Guerrero. Again, in a weird comparison to Heath Slater and James Ellsworth, I feel like their world title runs were kind of supposed to be like, oh, feel-good moments. You know what I mean? I don't know if they were going to be main eventers for life. I mean, obviously, I heard Eddie was penciled in to win another WWE championship before he died. And then, but like Benoit, like he kind of went back to the mid card afterwards, and he was in like before he died, he was in ECW as ECW champion, which yeah, it was a champion of a promotion, but we all know that that ECW title did not hold as much value as the world title or the WWE title. So I think they did benefit from having. I think they benefited more from having two world championships. Let's put it that way. They didn't really benefit from the brand split. They benefited. I can't talk today. They benefited from having two distinct world championships. So coming into the list, finally, 5 minutes into this goddamn video, and we're finally going to get to the list. Number 5, Dolph Ziggler. So Dolph Ziggler was kind of doing absolutely nothing for the past like 3 years. I mean, like ever since God, like he had that good run with. Like, I feel like around like 2013, he was kind of getting a little hot. You know what I mean? He won that world title. He had that huge ovation. I think it all went downhill after that concussion he got. Ever since then, he has not been the same. He's not been able to have, the same, the fans have not been able to get behind him the same. He hasn't had the same, aura to him. He hasn't had the same victory streak and all that. But this move to SmackDown really, really helped him, I think. It really wasn't the world title shot he got. It was the Intercontinental title he shot. God. It was the Intercontinental title match that he got that gave him, that big push. The feud with The Miz was absolutely amazing. It's given him a new edge. It's given him more time. I also think, I feel like Ziggler is kind of that guy. I'm sure he goes out there every night and he enjoys it, but I feel like, the more you give to Ziggler, the more you'll get. I mean, I bet it's like that with most guys, but I feel like Dolph Ziggler, if he feels like he's important, he's really going to step it up. I mean, I'm sure he gives a good effort. I'm not trying to call Dolph Ziggler out. He just seems like that kind of guy. I mean, when you come out with trunks that say, like, I'm over it or shit like that, like, you can't help you can't blame me for getting that image of you. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I just think that's how Dolph Ziggler is. And I think having him on SmackDown, away from the 3-hour show, having him away from big-time guys like Seth Rollins and Roman Reigns, who WWE clearly favors more than Dolph Ziggler, has given him a lot of edge. And I think he recently did that. He showed signs of turning heel, which I'm pretty sure is going to be a heel turn. It was the first week, so I can't really tell 100%, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be a heel turn. So that will give him a new edge, new heel Ziggler. We haven't seen heel Ziggler since what? He kind of did that. He kind of came back as a face in 2013. So it's been a couple of years, since we've seen heel Dolph Ziggler. So I'm open to it. I think it could be great. He really did come into his own in the latter portion of 2016, and I'm excited to see what else he has in store as a heel. So I think he definitely benefited. Coming at number 4, we have Jeff Hardy. Kind of the same. I mean, a lot of this is the same theme of like guys who, WWE likes, WWE wants to give them a chance, but if there's one giant roster, we have to give the title to Cena or Orton or Shawn Michaels or Triple H or anything like that. You know what I mean? I know Shawn Michaels didn't get the world title past Survivor Series, but just use the metaphor. So I feel like with Jeff Hardy, it kind of gave him having him on SmackDown kind of gave him a little creative outlet, because he's not the traditional guy, and it was similar to a Daniel Bryan situation, except WWE was actually kind of behind Jeff Hardy, but WWE definitely felt like someone that really didn't fit their image, especially in like because he was on top around 08-09 in WWE. And I feel like SmackDown kind of gave him a creative outlet. It kind of made him, it allowed his personality to come out a little bit more, because SmackDown did still kind of had that different feel. I mean, SmackDown 08-09 had a really, really huge roster. It had Punk, Jericho, Mysterio, Jeff Hardy, Taker, Edge, if I didn't mention Edge. But yeah, like he had a lot of guys to work with, and I just feel like if he were on Raw, he would have gotten lost in the shuffle with all the main eventers. I just don't feel like WWE ever kind of thought of him as a huge star, even though around 2008, 2009, he was probably the most over babyface they had. I mean, no, he definitely was. He definitely was the most over babyface. Maybe not the most over person. There might have been a better heel, like maybe heel Jericho was the most over in terms of the crowd reaction, or maybe heel Cena. Sorry, not heel Cena, but maybe Cena evoked more of a reaction. He got like more cheers and boos. But when it came to strict cheers, Jeff Hardy was probably number one. I mean, he had, the casual fans and the hardcore fans behind him. So he kind of had that Daniel Bryan kind of vibe to him, where everyone still really, really loved Jeff Hardy. And they were able to give him the WWE Championship. They were able to kind of give him that world title. They gave him that moment. Granted, his world title run's never really they were never really that long, but they gave him the world title a couple times. So, I really feel like if there was just one world title, I really don't think Jeff Hardy would have had a chance to even hold the world title. He might have been in main event matches, but I don't think they would have given him the title. So, and he produced a lot of great matches. His stuff with Punk was great. He did a lot of stuff great. So I think he definitely benefited from being on SmackDown. And again, it might be more of a Benoit Guerrero situation where it's the second world title. Like, he still would have been popular, he still would have been good, but having that second world title there really, really helped him out. Coming in at number 3, The Miz. So, The Miz is great. He has been, a lot of people are telling themselves, like, oh man, I never thought in a couple of years Miz would be this great. And people, there are always those, jaded fans who are like, oh yeah, Miz has always been this good. You just haven't been looking hard enough. The fact of the matter is, Miz has not always been this good. You know what I mean? He has had his moments, yes, but there are times where Miz is just, and it's not even his fault. It's just him, remember around, 2012, 2013, The Miz was unbearable. He was awful. And it wasn't necessarily him. It was him as a face. The Miz is not a face. Let's just be real here. The Miz is not a face. Who could get behind The Miz? You know what I mean? But having him as a heel, this is better than the stuff he did when he was WWE champion. And even then, I didn't think he was all that. He's finally getting it. You know what I mean? He really has got. I shouldn't say it like that. That sounds condescending. But he's finally connecting with the audience. That's what I should say. The audience is really starting to get The Miz. And similar to Jeff Hardy, SmackDown has given him more creativity. They've given him more attention. And having Maurice there at his side is just so great. And I mentioned this in my Good, Bad, and Ugly video. It's just The Miz has everything you could want in a heel. And I mean, he is a fine wrestler. You know what I mean? There's nothing great. I don't see Miz ever having a 5-star match. He had a really, really great match with Dolph Ziggler. He didn't have any of those classics, you know what I mean? But overall, I still think, Miz has so much more to give. I think I just think, him holding that Intercontinental Championship was, it elevated it really. And I mean, when Dean Ambrose beat him, the place went crazy because, he's that unbearable heel where everyone just wants to see him get his ass kicked. You know what I mean? And he always is sleazy, always finds a way out. It's just Miz really, in a roster where you have all these great in-ring talents, it's so easy for the Miz to be just overlooked. And I mean, look back to that Fatal 4-Way at Extreme Rules 2016, where you had him, Cesaro, Kevin Owens, and Sami Zayn. People were like, 3 great workers and The Miz. And I have to agree because The Miz is not as sound of a wrestler as Cesaro, Owens, or Zayn. But look me in the eye and say who is the most over out of the 4 of them. The Miz. In terms of maybe not who do fans love the most. You could say, oh, it's Kevin Owens or it's Cesaro or it's Sami Zayn, yeah. But in terms of evoking the correct emotion out of the audience, no one does it better out of those 4 than The Miz. I would think people hate The Miz more than they love Kevin Owens. Or they hate The Miz more than they love Sami Zayn. Or at least for casual fans. Let's just do the casual fan pool. I would say the casual fan hates The Miz more than they love Cesaro, Sami Zayn, or Kevin Owens. And that's not necessarily the fault of any of those 4 guys. It's just WWE allowing them to use their creative juices to produce something. And I think The Miz has done that well. So Miz, number 3. Coming in at number 2, we have Edge. The thing about Edge is I always think Edge would have been great. However, would he be the record-setting champion holder that he is today? No. If it weren't for the brand split, no, he would not be. I think Edge realized. Edge kind of had his initial startup on SmackDown in 2002. He was part of the SmackDown 6, so immediately everyone was noticing him. You know what I mean? He was in the middle of those SmackDown episodes where he was having classic matches. He had that classic match with Eddie Guerrero, in my opinion, the best match in SmackDown history. That match with Eddie, that no DQ match in September of 2002. He had the tag team match, for the first SmackDown tag team titles. That's essentially what they were. They're now the WWE Tag Team Championships, but they were essentially the SmackDown Championships. He was a part of he was like a pioneer for SmackDown, really. Like when people say like the SmackDown poster child, a lot of people say Taker just because, he's the veteran that was always on SmackDown. But in my opinion, the person who put SmackDown on the map was Edge. I mean, he's really like synonymous with SmackDown. Sure, he was on Raw. He was on Raw for what, like 04 to '07, I think. And I think he started to realize in '07, because he came back in '04. He was mid card for a while. And of course, they gave him the title in '06. He lost it, and then he eventually won the title back in '06 around that time. And then after that, in '07 he was like around like that time he was like Foreman rated RKO. He was still in high profile matches, but he wasn't at the very tippity top. And I think he realized like, oh shit, I'm on a show with Randy Orton, John Cena, Shawn Michaels, Triple H. I need to get the hell out of here. And he went on SmackDown in '07 because he won the Money in the Bank briefcase from Kennedy, and he cashed it in against like Taker after a match with like Batista or something like that, and he won the title. And since then, he was just on a crash course for success. He was on fire. And that's where I feel like SmackDown is where he cemented his like legend status. And because of his separation from guys like Cena and Orton and Triple H and Shawn Michaels and guys like that, he was able to establish himself as one of the greats. And I mean, so it kind of just the way it worked out for him, how he had his humble beginnings of becoming a single star and one of the best single stars of all time in SmackDown with those great matches, with the SmackDown 6, and kind of establishing himself as a mid card, as like a dominant mid card player, and then kind of transitioning from that during the time on Raw, and then going to SmackDown to cement his legacy. Like Edge has had a great career, and he definitely used the brand split, because I mean his reign on top was in the brand split era. '02 to '08, that's hardcore brand split time. And that's when Edge was really, feeling it. And I guess, just he kind of used his beginning and end in SmackDown to really establish himself as that like all-time legend. Like all these other guys that have been on the list so far, they kind of were like, they made their careers better, but Edge to me made himself a legend through the brand split. But he is still not number one, because the thing is with Edge, the reason I put him at number 2 was despite the fact, even if there wasn't a brand split, he still would have been okay. He still would have been a legend. I don't know about this next one. Number 1 to me, the man who benefited most from the brand split is John Bradshaw Layfield. Now, aside from Paul Heyman's ginormous dig at him when he said the only reason you were WWE champion for a year was because Triple H didn't want to work Tuesdays. Listen, that's kind of true. Not saying explicitly Triple H didn't want to work Tuesdays, but what the hell was Bradshaw doing before the brand split? Absolutely nothing. He was a part of the APA, and no one cared about the APA anymore. You know what I mean? He was in like just think about it just think about it for a second. A lot of these guys before the brand split, they were doing something. JBL was doing absolutely nothing. Now I know he wasn't like the brand split immediately made him a star, but that gimmick change from the tough APA Bradshaw to John Bradshaw Layfield, the millionaire. That like if we had a bunch of main eventers, if we had a bunch of guys to wrestle Eddie Guerrero for the WWE Championship, I think they would have just kept Bradshaw being Bradshaw. You know what I mean? I'm not saying SmackDown is 100% responsible for that, but it definitely let them give him the chance to be John Bradshaw Layfield. And it's not like he was able to get a title shot out of it. JBL became the longest champion in SmackDown history, right? He was a big deal. He was a main event player there. And it's not like JBL rose through the ranks and he worked his way up the ladder, and after kind of like what Edge did, he established himself as a mid-carder, and then he transitioned, he got main event experience, and then he was a full-blown legend. JBL woke up one night literally a different person and got a WWE Championship match. That's literally what happened. He was doing nothing. He was a part of the APA, and again, no one cared about the APA. It's not like he was part of this tag team and fans were so deprived of Bradshaw that they wanted him to break off from Farouk and become, the single star. It literally came out of nowhere. I'm not saying it was bad or anything. Like, I personally think the JBL character, it was great for the time because, like, look at, like, like, he's this big Texas millionaire. Look who our president was at that time. Just some white dude, millionaire from Texas. You know what I mean? So, like, I think a lot of people, anger towards George Bush kind of fueled that heat. That's always what JBL reminded me of. I always thought that's kind of what it was, like a parody off of George Bush. So many people disliked George Bush that kind of the heat kind of transferred to JBL. And it's also the typical like, oh, I'm a millionaire, blah blah blah. You know what I mean? That'll piss anyone off. So I really think having him on SmackDown, WWE just said, fuck it, like, let's try it, like, let's have him do this thing that's radically different. It's not, again, that's also another thing I like didn't really point out that much, or I really didn't bring a lot of attention to. Like, he was the bar brawler and shit, like, he was Bradshaw, and now all of a sudden, he's JBL. It's just like, he changes his music entirely, completely different entrance, completely different moveset, completely different gear. You know what I mean? Like, he literally changed everything about himself. This would not have happened if it was just one giant roster. And even if it did happen, people would not have cared. They wouldn't have noticed. And they probably wouldn't have put him in the title match. You know what I mean? Or they could have pushed him, but would people have cared? No, but I think people were able to swallow it and people were able to accept it because on SmackDown, who did they have in 2004? They had Eddie, but, what was Angle? I thought Angle was injured around this time. Because, I mean, he came back as the general manager a couple months later, right? And then Guerrero, I'm sorry, not Guerrero, Brock was gone. I mean, like, who else did they have? They had Eddie as the champion and no one else. And I mean, they just made a new star, and more power to him. They made a star, and JBL, I don't think he's in the Hall of Fame yet, but he's probably going to go in at some point because he is a big deal, and he did win the WWE Championship. So, I feel like if it weren't for SmackDown, it either would have A, never happened, or B, gone completely unnoticed by the fans. So I will give my hat off to JBL, no pun intended. But that's it for me. This video went way longer than I thought. That's usually what I say about a lot of my videos. But I will see all of you later.